Okay, so we are recording. And okay, so I guess we'll get started because we're all good on both ends. Okay, so um, hi, Victor. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast. I've spoken to you in the past about the exciting world of what auditors go through. So I know that you have some great expertise on a lot of varieties of topics in the food safety industry. So thanks for coming on the show.
It's my pleasure.
So why don't we just start by getting a good background in you so our guests can know about you. You have a long path in food safety. So could you give me a brief background on what your career path looked like?
Sure. When I graduated in 1983 with a degree in biochemistry from the University of Toronto, and then went back to do another degree in microbiology. And so I started entering the food industry in 1986. It started off with Nabisco's corporate lab um, as a microbiologist, but immediately almost went into the food safety area. And then through my background in different sorts of venues, sort of food ingredients, pharmaceuticals, biomedicals, gained some industry experience in actually implementing food safety systems. And then what happened in 1995 was I joined a global company, SGS, Société Générale de Surveillance, and they're based in Switzerland in Geneva. And I started with them as to run the food lab, but very quickly thereafter, I said we need to move into HACCP. We need to move into food safety. So I joined a team of 8. They chose 8 people globally to start off their food safety system. Train all their teams globally. Um, so we went to Virginia. Actually, we did our FDA training in Virginia. We did course training and course writing in the UK and in Switzerland and Geneva. And so after that, basically what we did was travel the world, training uh, companies and training SGS offices in how to do food safety in HACCP. And then we switched from that we elevated from that into the Global Food Safety Initiative type programs when they came out, starting with BRC and then moving into SQF and then FSSC. And what happened was after several years of doing this, I've been doing this now for over 30 years, 25 years with SGS. What I found was that auditing and auditors are getting a little bit um, lax. The people are losing the risk value. So I ended up writing a new approach, not a new certification, but a new approach that focuses in on risk assessment and focuses in on targeting resources to risk and giving companies value in avoiding recall rather than just filling out a checklist. And it gives customers a really reliable source of information. Now, my new venture or my legacy venture really is to train young people, the next generation of food safety auditors, and to illustrate to them what kind of career is ahead of them in food safety, whether it be an industry implementing or whether it be with certification bodies, auditing and certifying. Both are very lucrative careers, and a lot of people don't know about them yet. So this is my goal is to educate people through training, through e-guides, through podcasts such as this one, to move forward in this career and really learn the proper way to train and audit and implement food, cannabis, logistics, animal feed safety systems.
Wow, that is amazing. It sounds like for someone who's familiar with SGS, to me, they've always just been there as being that food safety. Like I think of them and I think of the food safety. So for you to have been through that transition to start going around and training within their departments, that's a pretty big thing to me at least. So, wow. And as well, I think that your goals are really admirable, and I'd like to break that down a little more because you had mentioned that auditors are becoming a little lax and about the I believe you said the risk management. I kind of, in the resources, I wanted to dive a little bit more and try to address why do you think that people are seeing that, and can you explain more about what that means?
Yes. I mean, the approach that I developed is called risk optimization. And I actually started a group with a bunch of other very highly qualified trainers and consultants called a Risk Optimization Resource Center. So what we do is we actually focus in on techniques that aren't usually trained properly, which is the how-to of risk management and the how-to of food safety systems or feed safety or cannabis safety systems. So what we do is we train people using toolkits and techniques
Okay, so
in how to do this properly.
okay, so with toolkits and such, I guess the best thing that we should start with as well is, I know for someone who wants to become an auditor, or I've talked to, it's kind of complicated to even figure out how you would go about it coming out of, let's say, me, I was a chemistry graduate. What's the process of becoming an auditor, at least in Canada? I know it might be different to different places in the world, but let's focus on Canada.
Yes. Well, it's pretty much the same in most places to become a Global Food Safety Initiative or GFSI scheme auditor. And that would be to audit BRC, British Retail Consortium, SQF, the Safe Quality Food, or FSSC, the Food Safety System certification schemes. So the ones that differ are the ones like, for instance, if you're going to be a regulatory auditor, CFIA, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, is similar, but a little bit different from the Food and Drug Administration or FDA auditors in the US, or the US Department of Agriculture auditors, or the Royal Society of Health in the UK, et cetera. So the basic training to become an auditor has traditionally been not exactly correct. So we're trying to improve that process. So the basic training right now for auditors, for certification audits, is to, first of all, have a degree or a diploma in some cases, and then to move ahead to experience in the industry, and then actually as an apprentice auditor, that counts as experience in the industry as well. And then to move into managerial roles, either QA management, quality assurance management, or into food safety certification management, et cetera. And that will be the difference between a regular auditor and a lead auditor, or an audit manager. So there's a big progression, but there's also a different side of this that is very, very lucrative, and a lot of people don't really know about it. And that's what I'm trying to develop, which is consultancy auditing and training and implementing assistance. So what we do with that is we actually train people to become valuable consultants, not just consultants who don't really know what they're doing, but properly trained with the toolkits, with the techniques, the advanced techniques, to allow a company to not only find their risks better, but also to allocate their resources properly to the level of control they have over the risk. And what that does is it increases the efficiency of the system, and it increases the actual effectiveness of the program, the risk control program. And that's, so managers in the industry love it. You know, you do better on certification audits, and this is a career that a lot of companies can use. So this is a career path that a lot of individuals can get into without having to go through the structured rigor of the certification auditor. So both those paths are open and very lucrative careers.
Wow, so okay, I'm just breaking down. So with the as working as a consultant, you're helping to consult the consultants, but you're not treating it as, because I know some people might just start a consultancy business, at least from they just choose to do so because they've had experience and such in the field. But it sounds as though you're really backing it up with that experience, and you're creating tools for newcomers who can do this, but not just they come out of school and then now all of a sudden they're being this consultant, but you're giving them the stronger tools that they can show expertise.
Exactly. Because the difference is that, as I said, the traditional path has been just academic, really, and industry experience and things like that. For instance, you could be qualified as an auditor even if you've done 20 inferior audits, you know. So that's the problem with the industry today. So what we're trying to do with this joint venture that I have with FoodGrads is to actually move into those areas and address those areas with newcomers into the field, as well as people who want to change careers and get into this field. Give them the tools to do what auditors don't do well right now. So what they don't do well right now is have techniques that keep them consistent. So we give them the toolkits that will help them be very consistent in their approach. It's not like filling out a checklist. It's actually teaching them the techniques. It's a difference between just saying, okay, here's a checklist, here's how you drive a car. Okay, this is how you drive a Honda Civic. Okay, and it gives you the manual and everything to do with that. But you're not teaching them how to drive, how to look for pedestrians, how to look at traffic signals, how to look at, you know, the warning signs on the road, how to drive in adverse conditions. You're just showing them the checklist of how to drive this car. So what we're doing is actually showing them the techniques, how to develop the skills as an auditor, for instance, how to understand, how to identify risks, how to walk in and use your senses to really see more than most people see, and to observe things, and to be able to communicate these things effectively, to be able to train effectively, to become a good trainer. And all of these things are broken down into toolkits, and I have developed even an e-guide, a digital guide that takes you through in little bits, voiced over instructions on how to use each toolkit. So those are available with the training that I'm doing to FoodGrads as well. So that's the difference between the traditional auditor training or food safety training and this new approach, risk optimization, is that we give them those toolkits and the techniques to do the things that auditors have been doing poorly, or people who have implemented food safety or feed or logistics or cannabis safety have been doing poorly over the last few years. And this is, you know, I have 30 years of global food safety implementation, training, and audit experience. I was a lead trainer and auditor for SQF, for FSSC, as well as BRC in the past. But I've given all that up so I can focus on this new direction, which is to focus on really what companies need to succeed in risk management, showing this to companies as well as their customers and retailers, and also showing young people and career changes how to properly develop their skills for this and to be really effective in implementing and auditing and training food safety and feed cannabis and logistics. So that way, the industry, the next wave into the industry, actually will be better than the current one.
That is so cool. I mean, I definitely, from even my little stint that I was in quality assurance, I've had experiences where I was doing self audits within the plant, and you're right, from what I see, it's a lot of checklists when an auditor would come in. I'm going to check for this, 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 and this. And the training, in my opinion, for what I was doing, even just as like within my own facility, wasn't, I was looking out for things on a sheet of paper that I hadn't actually been really taught how to look for. So if it would be for something like, let's say, identifying cracks and creaks within the shipping dock, let's just say, it would say that on the checklist, but I really wasn't formally trained on what exactly that looks like. So I was using my intuition, and that's not what should be really the case with, especially something in food safety and auditing. So I'm not surprised to hear that that is something that you're identifying as something that needs to be improved on for the next generation, because especially with everything going on right now, food safety is even more of a point of discussion. So hearing that you want to train people to be better, not just from like a step-by-step basis, but cultivate the skills within by doing these different trainings. I think that that's a great goal and something that you're moving forward with. And I think that one of the things that we kind of got ahead of here is talking about the program that you're doing, but we didn't really formally introduce what's it going to be, because I'm excited to know that FoodGrads is going to be the platform that you plan to release this food safety training program. Maybe we could just go back and give a brief description of what that is and what can be expected of it. If I was a new graduate and I was coming out of chemistry and I was thinking about becoming an auditor and I heard about this course, what can I expect from it?
Yes. Well, Nicole Galacci, who's the founder of FoodGrads, and myself have been talking about this actually for years. And I've always had this sort of goal, and she has the exact same goal of training people to be more effective in the food safety field. So one of the ways we are going to do this is by introducing a series of levels of training to get you up to speed, a level 1, level 2, level 3 training, to get you into different levels of qualification to be an intro level food safety implementer or feed. When I say food safety, you can take it to mean food, feed, cannabis, or logistics, any one of those. So when you get into that field, you need to have some basic training. So there's one training course that we offer that will be providing that training and the basic toolkits to do this. And then we have what's called a lead implementer training, which is a bridge training for new grads as well as for career changers. And this is a very intensive look at not just the basics. It's not going back to the stuff you learned in college or university. What is a biological hazard? What is a CCP, et cetera. We will redefine, and in fact, you will learn that some of the terms that have been taught in the past have not been taught correctly. So what we teach them is how to actually develop those skills to get into different levels of implementing the program. So that's called a lead implementer bridge training. So that's offered as well. And the very important sidebar that goes with this is that we will be publishing an e-guide to each industry this fall and this winter. So what the e-guide is, and I explained it before, is a series of modules that takes you through the toolkits with voiced over instructions that shows you step by step how to implement a product safety or service safety system, from designing the system to implementing, to training it, to auditing it. All of that is in little bits, snippets, if you will, modules that you can follow using the toolkits and audio. Because what we find very important is that the way people are training is poor right now, is ineffective. So I've changed the dynamic of training, and part of my background has been learning how to train, train the trainer. So part of the training is also to teach you to become an effective trainer. So what we do is not use heavy manuals that nobody reads. It's to use multimedia, to use photographs, videos, exercises, workshops, toolkits with voiceover instructions, actually visually and audio, using your audio skills, using your visual skills teaches you how to do these techniques, and teaches you also how to implement those types of learning techniques in a plant. For instance, taking videos of procedures instead of putting them in manuals. So those are the kinds of things that will be included in the training, and it's divided up into 4 main modules plus an executive management module. So the 4 main modules are advanced risk assessment, control validation, hazard analysis, etc. So those would be that first identification component. That's extremely important. And it uses a specific approach called risk optimization. And there's a tool that goes with it. It's called the risk optimization calculator. So it goes with that. Then the second part is supply chain monitoring and management, which shows you how to manage the vendors according to risk levels and control tiers and effectively manage the resources. Then the third one is effective corrective action and root cause analysis and closure of corrective actions with evidence. And then the last module, extremely important, and one of the most overlooked modules in the industry, is internal auditing, preparing, planning, operationalizing, performing, following up, and closing out an effective, solid internal audit program. And I don't mean a single audit, I mean a program that's actually operationalized to make it function. So all of these are taught in a way that management of industry, management of certification bodies, management of regulatory bodies, they can all see the value in this. And most of all, the customers and the consumers benefit because they can get a really good handle on the fact that their vendors or their suppliers are actually focusing on the risk rather than just putting up a piece of paper, which is the way it is now. So we're addressing all the weak points in the current system, and we're putting them in a way that can be effectively uptaken in learning. So that's and the value of FoodGrads is they connect, their whole mission is connecting grads or career changers with industry. So this type of program bridges it beautifully in that it teaches them how to hit the ground running. So one of the things we offer is when we do this training, the last stage of the training is actually showing people who attend the training how to develop a different sort of resume, if you will. Traditionally, the resumes have been, you know, here are my courses, here's my degree, here's what I did in the summers, here's what I've done in the past, etc. Managers see these by the hundreds when they're hiring people. What we show them how to do is use something called a master planning toolkit that basically shows them, go to a company website, pick one of their products, use this toolkit, it'll show you how to build a framework for a product safety program around this product. And you submit that along with your credentials to a company. And that, we feel, will make you much more desirable as an employee.
Wow. That is so cool. Like, I mean, there's so many different things to break down with that in terms of the first, you know, you're actually teaching how to systematically think about how to assess risks in that. And that, you know, that's valuable in itself from going into food safety period. But then also it really sounds like you're tailoring it to make people stand out with the resume, because the point that you just made at the very end, to be able to create this schematic and show, like even showing an example of work on your resume, that's going to stand out. But if a manager is looking for these keywords, like if for example, let's say again, I'm coming out of my chemistry degree and I talk about my coursework, there's not really much for me to stand out in terms of what I've done, because I've focused on just like my laboratory techniques. I can pipette, I can titrate. Those are useful skills, but to be able to bridge it and go to that next level above and have that support from a company, from FoodGrads supporting, as well as your program, Victor, that would definitely stand out. And I couldn't see why someone as like a manager wouldn't jump to hire someone like that, because you're already demonstrating that skills. And that's a thing with food safety, I find in general as well, is it's a hard thing to demonstrate right at a school that you could do it, because frankly, a lot of times you just don't even have the skills to promote yourself. So to have something that you can stand out, I don't see why a student wouldn't want to do something like that. And if I'm correct, this would be fully online, that anyone could do it from across the country?
In fact, across the globe. Yeah, it's worldwide. It's available worldwide. We're actually in the process of translating it into 4 languages right now. So it's already available in English. It's being translated into French, Spanish, and German right now. And then there are future plans to translate into Portuguese and Mandarin. So there's a lot of scope built into the program. But you're right. The real issue here is how do you get people properly qualified? And if I'm a hiring manager, the challenge I'm facing is I need to get somebody in. I can't afford to pay very experienced people, and even if I do, they come in with preconceived ideas that don't really work for my company. So they haven't been effective in the past. They've just learned how to fill out checklists, as you said. Um, so they're saying, okay, well, this person's going to be expensive if I hire an experienced person from the industry, and I'm not sure how effective what they've learned is going to be. This way, we have certificates for each one of these training courses, and it actually illustrates to the management how this person can function in their operation. Not only that, they can address the most important element. I don't have time, I don't have the resources, I don't have the people to train somebody properly when they come into this company. So if FoodGrads and we can do this training for them, that will, using the risk optimization approach, that will alleviate that whole anxiety from that level of anxiety from the company management, and that will also make you much more hireable, because that's the hole they're looking to fill. New grads are coming in, they're sometimes less expensive, but what this type of training does, it makes them more valuable. So they're not going to undercut you as much as they would somebody coming in with no experience or no demonstrable skills. So this way, they can come in and show the company how they can do things. They can actually instruct the company on how to change their program. And we've piloted this in the past in many countries, including Canada, and it's worked really well.
Wow. Yeah, no, it sounds like something that would be, I'm not surprised to hear that there's been success with it because, like you said, I know with new hires, one of the big things is, um, it can be expensive to hire someone that's a more senior level, but they do want to have someone with experience that can help them right out of the gate because learning in itself, even when you come to a new company, taking the time to actually learn about what they're doing, that takes time. But to then throw on the food safety on top of that, that it's just a lot of time and it costs a lot for the company. So if you could come in already having that strong background, showing proof that you've done it, and um, that would definitely make you more desirable and stand out. So
Yeah, and in addition to that, you're coming in with a fresh approach that they haven't seen before, and you're coming in with toolkits that will actually help them more effectively manage their resources and manage their money. So you're showing them with these toolkits, and you're taking sort of a leadership role right off the bat, which they really value. Of course, and it depends on the company culture, but most good companies value people who can provide valuable input. Like Steve Jobs said, you don't hire good people and tell them what to do. You hire good people and let them tell you what to do. So what they're looking for is not so much people who are experienced as people who can help them. So there's a big difference in how you market yourself as a new grad or a career changer, because you're not going to have the type of experience they perceive in their head. But there's a difference between, do I have experience or do I have techniques and toolkits that can really help you? So that the experience can be, you're going to learn their management system, their culture, their processes anyway. That's part of your learning in that company. So what they're looking for is, what can you bring to us that we don't already have? And that's where these toolkits and this risk optimization approach of training, implementation, modules, learning, what we call adult learning format training, and experienced auditing, experience in corrective action. All of that stuff is targeted to teach people to train on what industry really needs to implement food safety or product safety properly, and how to show that to your customers and regulators. That's what this whole program is about. And that's another part of the toolkits. It also shows companies how to demonstrate what they're doing in a very concise way using a toolkit to their customers and the retailers, regulators, etc. So that's part of what these people will bring into the company as well. So that's the value. The value difference here is not, do you have arbitrary experience in the industry? Do you have experience in food safety? Well, you might have experience in it, but it might be the wrong kind of experience. So this will show you, this is a whole new approach. We've used all our experience globally over the past 30 plus years to put this into a very, very useful format, a very, very useful package. And the reason I chose to do this through FoodGrads is that Nicole and the FoodGrads group shares that philosophy of making, making it all about the next generation, making it all about the young people who will actually take up this. The other part of it, the other part I didn't really go into before was a lot of this is e-learning. A lot of this is electronic. A lot of this is digital, multimedia. Nobody knows more about these techniques than young people. They're using, when I'm an old guy now. When I started, there was no such thing as a cell phone. There was no such thing as a laptop. You know, now these young people can do what I used to do in a day in 5 minutes. Researching a paper, for instance. You know,
Yeah.
there was none of that available to us. So the young, what young people should not underestimate is their value, the value that they bring to the table in these skills, these soft skills, being able to type on a keyboard really fast, being able to type on a cell phone very fast, being able to actually access information online very quickly, to absorb information from online portals. So these are the techniques that people of the former generation may not be as adept at doing. So this is another aspect that young people need to push.
It's interesting that you put it like that, because I think that a lot of young people, I'm going to put myself in that category. I'm on the cusp of, I think you call them Gen Z now, but then maybe me saying that doesn't make me one. But I think that we forget that that we have these skills and we can identify information really fast. Like I think that they just assume everyone just does that, when, like, why wouldn't you be able to do this like that? So I'm really excited to hear that the course has more than it's not just here is some information, now here's a quiz, and now you are trained in it. Because when I remember when I was doing my HACCP training, that's all it was. It was literally, here's some paragraphs, here's a PowerPoint, here's some quiz questions, now you're HACCP trained. And I felt that was such an not a smart way to go about it, because I didn't feel like I was really getting a lot out of that course. But hearing what you are planning on, well, you've already started to implement with the being able to, first of all, let's say with the step-by-step, it's not just reading step-by-step. So now here's the audio, and then there's the visuals. It's telling you exactly where to look. And like, there's this integration of so many different things. I think that it gets you excited about food safety, because frankly, it can be quite boring reading, this is a biological hazard, this is a risk. Just reading about it, it doesn't really hit home. But I think if you can really start to show why this is a risk, it also builds that experience in your mind. When you actually go out in the plant, you start to build those connections in your brain just by doing the online training. So you might think you've kind of done it just because you've done this really integrated learning. And I think that that's something that, irregardless of new graduates and all that realm, that this is the type of training that needs to move forward with food safety. I think not these boring PowerPoints. It's not effective to
Yeah,
my opinion, at least.
exactly. And that's perfectly put, because I call it death by PowerPoint, where
Yes.
where I use PowerPoint as well, but even the PowerPoint slides that I use are not bullet points. I use smart art. I use shapes and colors and to draw people's attention. That's part of the technique of training. You've got to keep people engaged, and there's the traditional way of training has always been, these boring train by clause. Okay. You don't implement a product safety or service safety program by clauses. You implement them in steps, in stages. So what we do is we follow the stages instead of the clauses. And then at the end, we showed, attendees how to relate these clauses to the various checklists. Okay? But most of the checklists are also flawed in that they don't focus on the right thing. And what's happening now is people are realizing, big customers are people who are buying are realizing that they're not getting the same risk value because from the GFSI checklists, from the HACCP checklist, the traditional certification bodies, because they don't have the time and they don't train their auditors properly. So when you have this kind of training, you're getting much more than you would from the traditional public training. You're getting somebody in your company who's actually been trained on how to focus in on the areas that would cause your company to have a recall. Focus in on things that would lose your brand reputation or decrease your brand reputation. That's where the difference, the value comes for management of a company. They're seeing somebody that is not going to just parrot everything that we've heard before, but somebody who's bringing a fresh approach, a new approach. And that's where young people and people who have open minds come in much more handy, because you don't want somebody who says, well, I've done BRC or SQF or FSSC audits. This is the way you do it. Because all they're going to teach you is how to implement a checklist and how to train by clause, the old-fashioned way, the way that we know doesn't work. And then what it does is they end up putting the system in place that hasn't been operationalized, that's way too cumbersome, that's not focused. And because it's not focused, you spend your attention on things that don't need as much attention. In fact, that decreases the attention you spend on the real risk areas. And so what that does is it exposes you to more risk, and it exposes you to a higher risk of recall and a higher risk of brand reputation loss. This technique will also show young people how to explain this concept to companies that they're intending to work for, to show them why this is more valuable, why this approach really helps them, because it doesn't really focus on getting a certificate. What it focuses on is managing your risk properly. Because if you have a certificate and you have a recall tomorrow, nobody cares about the certificate. Nobody cares about your GFSI certificate if you have a recall tomorrow. So what we're training them is train the company how to minimize the risk of that recall. And then you can go back and choose the right audit body, choose the right standard that fits in with your philosophy, and that way you'll get your certification. And the better you run your system, the more operationalized, the more focused it is, the more effectively you're using your resources, the more consistently you'll implement your system. And you'll do better on regulatory audits, you'll do better on certification audits as well. And you can also challenge bad audits. And all of these techniques are trained in this new approach to the new grads and to the career changers who go through this training.
It sounds like it's very beneficial, and it sounds as well that it also opens up more opportunities for actual types of jobs, because we know that in the food industry, there's a lot of, when it comes to food safety and quality within these departments, there's a lot of job titles, but those are more job titles and they can be encompassing many other things. So this training does sound like it also leads to other paths that aren't just primarily quality assurance or quality control, but maybe more specialized roles as you develop more in a company. Because I know with larger companies, these roles become more defined, where this person's purely focused on, for example, is the HACCP coordinator. That just comes to mind. So what other ones that maybe I didn't mention could this training lead to? What jobs or career paths?
Well, there are a number of them. First of all, being able to help somebody on a project basis. So if you're new and they can't afford to hire you full time, you may be able to make a career almost as a consultant does, using contracts to implement or train a company in these new techniques. So you have the toolkits, you have the information, and one of the benefits you have as well is that when you sign up for this training, you get automatic updates. You also get automatic enrollment in quarterly webinars that actually deep dive into some of these topics, answer questions that you might have, etc. So these would be set up every 3 months. We'll be having a webinar, and then we'll be issuing updates online to the e-guide, to the learning modules, etc. And people who attend this training, it's not, I have to attend another training and another one and another one, which is how the GFSI or HACCP training works. This one, once you attend the training, you get access to the updates, so that you can actually go into that consultancy field as well, knowing that you have up-to-date training and up-to-date techniques. So consultancy is one area. Assisting a company in implementing or training their employees. Remember, a lot of these companies now don't have access to these resources anymore, especially under the new COVID restrictions, etc. They don't have a lot of people on premises. They don't have a lot of access. And one thing we didn't really mention, we touched on the fact that all of this is virtual. All of these are digital or e-learning type or instructor-led learning online type training, is that they can use the same concept in training companies. They can use the same concepts. They can work through FoodGrads to offer their own training to companies as well. The second part is they can implement in a company. So they can be hired as a product safety specialist. Now, again, companies are seeing now that their recalls are going up. Their customers are being more stringent in what they're asking for, and they don't know what they're asking for. So they'll ask you to pile on more and more work. And what these techniques show you is how to kick back and how to show the customers how this is going to be effective, what you're doing is going to be effective. So they can then implement that in a company. They can also then qualify after a couple of years in a company, qualify, or even as an intro level, qualify as an auditor trainee or an auditor in a certification body, or even in a regulatory body such as Canadian Food Inspection Agency or the US FDA. So they can go into this, and remember, this is available globally. So you can join regulatory agencies, you can join consultant groups, you can join companies, you can join certification bodies, and you can also be a standalone trainer. You can join educational institutions. You can start up a bridging program of your own with local colleges, with local educational institutions or career centers that actually will mimic this type of training globally and will accentuate this. Obviously, you can also work for FoodGrads themselves in our group, which will actually allow you to have access to our certificates. So there are a number of different career paths, and I can tell you that career paths for an auditor, a qualified auditor, and a qualified product safety implementer are very strong. They're on the upswing, and they're going to keep going up, because especially if you have the ability to audit remotely and to train remotely. And we give you toolkits specifically designed for remote virtual audits, which is the future of auditing in my mind. People are not going to travel as much. They're going to be auditing virtually, and they're going to be training virtually, remotely. So this is the next best thing. And remember, if you're a young person, you're starting a family, you have young children, you may not be able to travel traditionally the way an auditor used to travel, or the way a trainer used to travel. Now, this will give you the option of working from home and allowing you to do a very effective career from home. So those are all options available to new grads and career changers.
Yeah, it sounds like there is a lot of options out there, and I think it would be smart for anyone who has any interest in food safety to just go for it, because it sounds like it can be a very rewarding career, because it's also a job where you are actually helping people directly. Like you're helping create good food systems which aren't going to hurt people, and that is so important, especially with everyone's distrust a little bit, and how with COVID going on, I know that people are a little more wary about where their food comes from, and they're thinking about it. So this career is a very valuable career because you can help people, you can help protect them, you can help keep people safe, and that is way important for if someone wants like a value in their career. This is the way to go. So we are coming close to the end of our talk, so I just wanted to answer a few more questions before I get you off. And the first one I wanted to ask you is, I always like to ask everyone, what advice would you give to students or fresh graduates who want to have a career path that's similar to yours?
Well, one of the things is to get proper training in how to be effective. And that's the difference. Don't just take traditional training that teaches you by clause and teaches you by, you know, the death by PowerPoint type thing. Look for something that's actually going to give you the skills that you need to hit the ground running. When you come out of school, when you come out of these courses, you say, okay, I know all the definitions, I know all the clauses, but where do I start? How do I actually do this? So this type of training will actually show you how to do this. So wherever you're taking training, look for training that teaches you how to do things. So not just teaches you the instruction manual of a car, if you're going to be a mechanic, but actually shows you the techniques that mechanics use, that good mechanics use, and that will be effective in keeping that car running well. So those are that's really the important part. One of the things I wanted to add is that there's a drastic shortage of people, qualified people, properly trained people in the field right now. Certification bodies, regulatory agencies, companies are scrambling to try to find people that are qualified. And they're getting a lot of people applying for those jobs that have traditional QA experience, very bad food safety program experience. They're getting underqualified people, poorly trained people, but they're not getting the right training mix. They're not getting the right qualified person for the job. So a lot of these people don't last long in those careers. So what this does is it shows you how to develop skills that will enable you to have a long-term career path in these fields. And what that does, because that addresses the big issue here, is where are you going to get a job that's not going to disappear in the next 5 years, or is not going to be taken over by a machine? Well, product safety implementation, training, auditing, those are things that machines can't do. So this is a very important career path for you.
Yeah, no, I don't think you can have any, I don't think anyone can argue that these jobs are going to go away. They're going to be here. I don't think that's a matter of opinion. It's just machines do not have the capabilities, and I don't think they prove me wrong, but I don't think they ever will. But with that, I also wanted to ask, I always just like to ask people if they have any recommendations for books, people, or podcasts that they think people should follow.
Well, I think in a nutshell, what we're planning to do is focus in the resources through FoodGrads, so that people will access it through FoodGrads, and I think that's a really good way of getting informed on this. There are some specific resources and tools that we bring up in the training, but most of the questions people should ask is when they're looking at a podcast, or they're looking at a webinar, or they're looking at a training program, is what can you teach me that I can't learn from just looking at a book? What can you teach me that I can't learn just by looking at a regulation? So what techniques can you actually teach me? Are you going to give me a paint by numbers, like a checklist, or are you going to teach me how to paint like Leonardo da Vinci? That's the difference here. So it's not really I can't recommend one type of podcast or one type of training. There's not a lot of good training out there. I'm saying that FoodGrads is offering you training that nobody else is offering. And this risk optimization approach, nobody's using it. So it's difficult for me to recommend training that, because all the other training that's out there is really focused on clauses, focused on definitions, things like that. So if you, there might be others that I haven't mentioned or haven't been exposed to that you can find, but if you're finding them, use these tenets, or use these approaches. Make sure that they actually teach you how to do it, not just the clauses and the definitions.
So it sounds like basically everyone, if you're listening, sign up for FoodGrads newsletter so you can keep up to date for all of these, everything that's going to be coming out with this training, so you can be the first in the know, and you're going to be the first ones to be able to differentiate yourself once you start to take these courses, and you'll be able to learn. So I think that's what you're saying.
Yes, and you'll have access to the e-guide and the webinars and things like that that will keep you up to date, and you can use the e-guide in your training and in your implementation as well.
So Victor, this has been a really lovely conversation. I've really learned a lot, and I'm really excited that I'm going to be the first kind of getting this out there to help share with students that they should be signing up for these courses, because it really sounds like it's a game changer, not only to get you that training that you need, but it could also really set you up for the next steps and even your entire career, it sounds like. So I'm pretty excited about that. And I wanted to just ask, if people wanted to reach out to you, where would they be able to find you?
They can either find me through FoodGrads, through linking to me through FoodGrads, or they can contact me directly at victor.muliyil@outlook.com. So victor.muliyil@outlook.com.
Cool. I'll make sure to link that in the show notes as
And
well.
if if through FoodGrads they can get, once they link in, because I'm not always available by phone. Once they contact me by email or through FoodGrads, I can then respond to them by email or text, or I can get back to them by phone and set up a phone meeting.
Ooh, sounds pretty awesome. So thank you so much, Victor, for being on the show. I think we got a lot of value out of that conversation, and I'm excited that I get to share this with everyone.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, Victor. Okay. Thank you, Victor. That was a really good conversation. I knew Nicole's kind of mentioned it in brief about what's going on, but I never really got to dive into learning about as much as that you've specified today. So this is so cool. Like, if I wasn't maybe thinking about doing my PhD, like, this is definitely going to be on my radar for if I do, or when I do decide to transition out of academia. So.
Well, is your PhD full-time?
I haven't decided, especially with COVID, to be honest with everything. I haven't decided what I want to do next. So once I start kind of soul searching,
because with COVID, one of the things that we've found is that with COVID, everybody's looking for remote everything.
Mm-hmm.
And people who have techniques that work remotely, like the remote auditing, virtual training, will be able to succeed where others aren't prepared for it. And I think that, if you have time on the side, I'd be more than happy to train you to do it on the side.
Wow. Yeah, I know with
because I know you're good at this, and I know, from speaking to you that you're the way you approach things is very, open-minded and very, very logical, and you'd be good at this.
Thank you for saying that, because I don't like to say, I'm recording this right now just because I haven't stopped it, but I don't want no,
that wasn't intended as a recording.
No,
but
no, that's what I'm saying. So that's the reason why I want to say this, is because when I was doing QA at David Roberts, I was just thrown to the wolves, and I wanted to know more, and I was not happy with how.
And nobody has the time.
Yes,
nobody has the time to train you. That's the problem.
Yeah, I was really upset because I knew my manager. Okay, first of all, he never got properly trained, because he only a year earlier he was in my role, and I wasn't very happy with how the food safety was at that facility. That's actually in part why I left, because but no one had the time to train people. So then I wanted to know more, but I didn't know. I did not know.
Well, one of the key services that we offer is gap assessing your current system.
So cool.
Because what we show you is how your current system is flawed, and we do it confidentially, so it doesn't, your customers never find out about it. Nobody knows, no certification body finds out about it. It's all you, as
Yeah.
a company. So, you know, imagine if you'd had all these toolkits and training and gone into David Roberts.
I wish I did. Honestly, like hearing you now, like this was just 2 years ago, and I wanted that. I didn't want to be, and I feel like, to be honest, I went back for my master's degree because in part, I didn't like the training, and because the master's sounded really interesting to me, because I needed something to also mentally stimulate me as well. And I found the job wasn't doing that. I think if I had something like this training, I probably would even consider, I would have probably stayed working because I would have felt more valued and I would have felt like I had more value. So
Yeah, and the other thing is it's just plain exciting to be
yeah.
part of a new approach. That's what I'm getting consultants with 20 plus years experience coming and saying I want to work with their team. And I didn't want to focus on the risk optimization resource center. I wanted to focus on
Mhm.
FoodGrads, right?
Right.
I didn't even mention the center.
That's
So
good.
and there was a reason for that. Is I want this to go through FoodGrads, the training, right? A risk optimization resource center is going to stay in the background. I told Nicole this as well. That's a sole proprietorship that I own,
Mhm.
right? But I'm not going to operate it as a company. I'm operate it as a resource center. So if somebody wants advice, they can come to us, right?
Mhm.
So that's different entity. But I want to run. I want FoodGrads to benefit from this as well, because she's had a good mission all along,
Yeah.
and I think it's a noble mission. It's the right thing to do. The problem is, again, convincing people that it is the right thing to do. You know,
Yeah.
but it is, when you convince people that they're going to spend their resources more effectively and more efficiently, then they start to listen.
Yep.
And the one thing that I wanted to make sure is that most people understand that the training that they're getting in industry is outdated,
Yep.
is
Yep.
poor, and you've seen it. I mean, it's horrible, the training, because the trainers don't know how to train. First of all, most of them, they're not qualified trainers. Most people who train in the industry aren't qualified trainers. They're consultants who sort of train just so they can make money. But I spent 6 months just learning how to train uh, in the UK at a place called Wooten Technical. So they teach you the techniques of effective training in adult learning format. Um, Adult learning concept training is totally different. So we actually have different types of training for different levels in a company. So we have different training. The operational staff gets trained, line staff gets trained on videos and photographs and things like that. The product safety or service safety staff team gets trained on toolkits and workshops. And the executive management gets trained on their specific roles and how this gives you value for money and return on investment. So just that concept, it's not one for everybody. Usually you have, it's HACCP training. It's for everybody. It's the same thing. We don't do that. We train per level, and we train these young people in this training. We train them how to do that training, how to write procedures. So instead of writing 20-page procedures, we show them how to write a one-page procedure in a HACCP plan format, and then follow it up with photographs and videos
Yeah.
without audio, and then you can transition the audio for any language.
That's so cool. I mean, everything. I'm really excited about this, and I also like, again, that it's going to be directed to students, because you don't know, as a student, you don't know which resources to go to, which one should I do, and for something that's more directly here, it'll build more trust for students to do that. But as much as I'd like to continue talking with you, I actually have a lecture starting in 3 minutes, so
Okay, sorry.
no, you would have no idea. I've just been wanting to stay on this call as long as I
Well, like I
can.
said, if you want to be trained, I'd be more than happy to work with you
Hmm.
on an individual basis. So if you want to contact me after you're done, or later this week, we can set something up.
Well, I will be following up with you. I mean, there's no, if I can do this part-time, like with this
Yeah, you
training
can
on the
do it. You
side.
can do it part-time, no problem. I mean,
Exactly.
you can
So
do this. you can review somebody's food safety program or logistic safety program, and especially now cannabis as it's coming up, they're totally lost. They don't know what to do.
Yeah, I know.
And I wrote the entire program for the entire cannabis stores.
Yeah, and it's very regionally. I know the area that with the GTA. I know if you go a little more down south, that's where a lot of the focus on the cannabis is. So, anyways, I do have to go. I want to keep talking.
Okay, so we'll follow up later, and you can let me know when you're free to talk.
Sounds great, Victor. This has been really fun conversation, and I really enjoyed it. So have
Okay,
a good
my
rest of the
pleasure.
day,
Yeah,
and
you too.
I'll follow up. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.